QuickBooks Online versus Xero, a deep dive. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be honest with you, though, I am a little biased going into this because in my own consulting practice, I have made a choice between these two applications. I decided, first of all, that it was important to pick one application and stick with it as far as the core accounting application, because in my own practice, I decided that the best way to scale it would be to be very focused on just one application. That being said, before I came to that decision, I developed extensive experience with both of these applications, both QuickBooks Online and Xero. A couple years back, I did a major cleanup job in Xero, which really had me going into the trenches in Xero, and I learned, I think, every nook and cranny of what the program does and how it works. So with that said, I'm going to plan on going through this as objectively as I can, but with the understanding that I do have a natural bias here. I have made a choice in my own practice to use QuickBooks Online, and I made that choice over Xero. By the end of this video, you're going to see why I made that choice ultimately. I am going to explain it to you as I go. A lot of the differences are not deal breakers, but by the time I get to the end, I'm going to explain to you the one major reason that ultimately made me want to use QuickBooks Online and not Xero. Meanwhile, I'm going to do my best to compare them side by side as objectively as I can. Let's take a look at my screen and see. We're going to break this down in terms of a few major areas. We're going to look at bank feeds. We're going to, and I'm going to show you a major problem that I have with the with how the bank balances work in Xero. We're going to look at entering transactions, and then we're going to look at reporting. Those are three kind of major areas that sort of encompass everything you need to do in these applications to manage a company's set of books. So over here, I've got a sample company open in QuickBooks Online. Let me actually get to a sample company here. We'll sign out. And we're going to go to the test company. Confirm I'm not a robot, and then Xero, I'm already in their demo company, right? And either of these products, it's very easy to go out and get the demo company so you can play around with both and see which one you like better. Remember, what I'm sharing with you is objective in the sense that I'm going to show you the facts and I'm going to demonstrate how both products work in each of these major areas. But I am going to be injecting my opinion in here because it's based on my experience with both products. So obviously, I'd encourage you to play with both products and form your own opinion about which one you like better. You may not care about the things that I care about. My perspective on these things is as that of a CFO who consults with companies to get the information compiled in a way that I feel is accurate, and then ultimately pull the information out in the form of reporting. And I need good reporting so I can review those reports with my clients and perform the right strategic analysis and come up with the right strategic plans for my clients. So with that said, we're going to take a look first at the bank feeds. In QuickBooks Online, you click on the banking menu here on the left. In Xero, right from the dashboard, you're going to see your bank accounts, and we can click, for example, here where it says reconcile 29 items to get into Xero's bank feed area. You're going to find as you look at these side by side that both of them essentially work the same way. Very different layout, very different interface. But you'll see that in both cases, we have some transactions that are matched. This is what we downloaded from the bank. It looks like we have a match to, or a potential match to, something that's already been recorded in QuickBooks. In Xero, same thing here. We have something on the left that was downloaded from the bank, and on the right, what appears to be, in all likelihood, a match. So far, no real difference between the two other than the layout and interface. They both work the same. They both do it very well. Now, this is a deep dive, so let's dig a little deeper. When we look at one of these matches, I could go in here and say, you know what, no, I don't think this is a match. Let's go create it, or let's find another match, right? Find and match. You can click this link here, and it will give you other potential matches. And what this also gives you the opportunity to do, as you can see here, is let's say that the transaction that was downloaded from the bank is actually the total of two separate transactions I have here in Xero. It makes it very easy for me to check off the multiple transactions in Xero that tie to what downloaded at the bank. So this is a great feature. QuickBooks Online essentially does the same thing. I can click into the transaction. It shows me why it thinks this might be a match, but I can click here where it says find other matching transactions and do the same thing. I can multi-select transactions where more than one transaction might equal a total based on what actually cleared on the banking side. So again, so far, both products held 100% equal on this. Again, only difference is the interface. Now let's say we're looking at a transaction such as this one in QBO for Amazon. And let's say I wanted to code this to computer equipment, and computer equipment is not on the books. All right, you got to be careful about the autofills. Right from here, it's very easy for me to add the account. Computer equipment and QuickBooks Online will give me the dialog to set up a new account and then take me right back here so I can finish coding it. In Xero, if I go to this transaction, for example, and I go to create, and let's say I don't have a transportation account to book this limousine expense, I can't add it. There's no option to add it from within here. And if you didn't know better, you would think this was it. So I have to, maybe duplicate the tab, go to the chart of accounts, add it, then come back here and code it. And even then, I might even need to refresh the browser page. I haven't tested to see if Xero is good about picking up a change that was made without refreshing the page. But because, again, I mentioned I do know this product pretty well, I know that that's not the way. There is a way to do this, which is clicking here where it says Add Details. And from within the Add Details screen, you will have an option to add a new account. Now, I have no idea why they would put it here and not in the summary location. Seems to me it's the same drop-down. It would be the same code needed. Just copy and paste the code into that part, and it should be very easy to make this available both places. And like I said, if you didn't know better, you would never know to do this. You would never assume necessarily that this would be where you'd need to go to add a new account. So again, not a deal breaker, but it's definitely a problem that I see in terms of friction that exists here in Xero that just isn't necessary. Okay, so let's go to the problem that I have that I mentioned in terms of how this number right here is calculated. This presumably is the statement balance, right? This is the balance that City National Bank should show is the available balance in this account as of today. But right now I'm going to show you exactly why this potentially is not the right balance. Because if I go here to the account transactions, earlier today while I was in here, I took, where is it? I took one of these transactions, I believe it was this one, and I marked it reconciled. So now I'm going to click in here, and it's letting me know that it removes the link because I marked it as unreconciled. And notice what happened here. Now the statement balance, the balance that's supposed to be based on City National Bank, has changed. Now, if that transaction happened to have been a transaction that truly cleared the bank, this balance that I'm supposed to be able to rely on that represents the balance on the bank side is not going to match the bank. It's not going to be accurate. The point being, there should be no way to manipulate this number by a user in the accounting product. This should be a number that's pulled directly from the bank. I have no idea why. There's no logical explanation I can think of that would help me understand why they have made it possible to manipulate this balance that way. In QuickBooks Online, if I look at these balances, the balance in the checking account, the balance per bank, cannot be altered by any user anywhere in QuickBooks Online. The only way to update this balance is to click Update and pull the data directly down from the bank account. To me, that's how a bank feed should work. This, in Xero, the way I can manipulate this number, it's an auditing nightmare. It means it's completely unreliable because it can be changed, and I don't know who's operating the books necessarily, which means knowing that this potential exists to change a number like this means I could never rely on it. I would always have to go back to the bank account, find out what the true balance is, and make sure that it agrees. So that's a big problem I have with how the bank balance is configured or calculated in Xero. Now let's look at entering transactions. You're going to find that entering transactions in both products is pretty much the same. We'll go back to the dashboard in both places. And entering transactions in Xero, very straightforward. Actually, both products have a plus sign, which the QuickBooks Online one they refer to as the Quick Create. I don't know if Xero calls it the same thing or something else, but the Quick Create is where you could go to enter any kind of transaction that you could possibly want to enter. In Xero, you can see it's essentially the same thing. Here they also let you add contacts and other things that aren't necessarily transactions themselves. And also both products have an area where you can go to focus on a specific type of transaction. So if I'm dealing with sales and customers and it's time to sit down and do my invoices, I go to the sales area. And what's nice to me in QuickBooks Online is the way they've laid this out across the top. From within this area, I can get from all the sales to just the invoices to my customer list to my products and services list. This is huge for me because it makes it very easy if I need to access the products and services, which would be the very subject of my invoices in many cases. So I can add things, change things, do what I need to do, and jump right back over here and create my invoices. In Xero, If I go to accounts, I can go to sales. Same basic idea. I get a nice dashboard with everything I need to know about what's going on with my customers and payments. I can see drafts, which would be estimates that haven't been turned into invoices yet. I can see what's awaiting payment. I can see what's overdue. And from here, of course, I can create any sales-related transaction. Here, I can send statements or I can import. So same basic options, very different layout in both products. No one, in my opinion, is better than the other here in terms of entering transactions. One thing I will say for Xero is if I go, for example, to create an invoice, with both accounting products, you can set up your item or your product, and you can configure that item to be mapped to a particular account. In Xero, if I choose an item, it wants me to confirm customer details. I'll ignore that for now. But notice if I choose an item, it comes up by default with the sales account. That's probably what was mapped to this item. Not probably, it is. But in Xero, I can actually change this. If for some reason in this one case, I want this going to a different income account or just generally a different account on the chart of accounts, I can enter anything I want to here without having to go back and edit the source item. QuickBooks Online doesn't offer that. And arguments can be made both ways about whether it's a good idea or not. The argument towards it not being a great idea is that potentially you could have a mess if you're hoping to be able to rely on the consistency of how the items are mapped. You could sort of destroy that here. If you don't care and you want the flexibility, and the flexibility is something that lends itself well to your process, then obviously this kind of capability is better for you. In QuickBooks Online, if you wanted to do it, you would go to the products and services list. You would edit the item. When you edit an item in QuickBooks Online, it's going to ask you if you want to do it for all items in the past and the future, or just new transactions going forward. And once you've made that choice, QuickBooks will react accordingly. And then notice here I'm in the products and services list, so I can still very quickly and easily jump right back over to my invoices. And as with both products, you can duplicate the tab to be working essentially in multiple windows at the same time. Now let's talk about the last part. Let's talk about reporting. I'm going to go to reports here. We're going to go to all reports in Xero. I don't think I did mention this, but I'm going to mention it now. The statement of cash flows is a core financial report that wasn't even available for the longest time in Xero. Xero did eventually make this available, but this is the first issue I have with the reporting area comparing QuickBooks Online to Xero. Let me go here to all reports. We'll go to business overview. Statement of cash flows can be found there. Here the statement of cash flows is under financial reports, which is great. Let's run it in both places. And you're going to see that the layout of the statement of cash flows in Xero, and let's do this for last year. The layout's very different. It's got the same basic sections, the operating, investing, and financing activities. But the key difference in the layouts here is that QuickBooks Online starts with the net income and reconciles that to cash in the bank at the end of the period. Xero's format does not. The difference is Xero is using what's called the direct method. QuickBooks Online is using what's called the indirect method. As a CFO who's trying to analyze information and answer one very important question that almost every business owner asks, especially when I first started working with them, the question invariably comes up. I made this amount of money. How come I don't have that same amount of money in the bank? The indirect method, which is the more common method. When I looked at Xero's statement of cash flows, it took me a while, and I literally had to go research it to find out and be reminded that when I was in college, in our textbooks, we learned about the two different methods. But the direct method, which is what Xero's using, is one I had not seen since the college textbook example. In other words, nobody that I've ever dealt with uses this method. It might be that it's popular to use in other countries, such as where Xero was born in New Zealand. That's very possible. Either way, it's not useful to me, because what I need to be able to do is use a statement of cash flows to do what, in my experience now, it's sort of meant to do, which is answer that question. How do I get from my net income to my cash in the bank? Xero's version of it fails to do that kind of reconciliation for me. So that's the first issue I have that has to do with a core and very important financial report. Let's go back to all reports, and then I'll talk about the next thing. So let's say I want to run a monthly profit and loss or a monthly balance sheet. Let's do a profit and loss. So I'm going to go back into the financial reports in Xero. I'll do the new income statement. Now, normally I would want to do something like this. I'll say last financial year, update, and we'll go here, we'll run this. Let's go to just recommended, profit and loss. This one I'll do this fiscal year to date, because in this case I know I have the data. Now let's say I want this grouped or totaled by month. In the columns over here, I can't do it, at least not with a simple drop down. Here it's just simple. Display columns by months, run report, done. Over here, what it'll take you a little bit to figure out the first time you're doing this is you would need to run this report for just the period of December of 2016. So let's move forward there. And then you would need to compare it to 11 previous periods. Again, not the end of the world, a little longer way to get to where you need to go. And now we've got the layout the same, but now comes my next problem. Notice here we have a report totaled by month in QuickBooks Online that starts from January and moves to the right on the timeline. As we go further into the future, I move to my right. Xero does it the exact opposite. It starts me with my most recent month and goes back in time. As a CFO, if I want to export this and use this to analyze trends and project numbers going forward into the future, I first have to flip the sorting of these columns. I have to do a horizontal sort, which frankly is a pain in the neck. And I don't understand what logic there is in laying it out this way. I haven't, as long as I've been doing this for a living, I haven't in my mind figured out why there would be an advantage or even a point in laying the information out in this kind of reverse chronological order. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now let's talk about customization of reports. So I'll go back to all reports in both cases. And we've already started to see a bit of this, but let's run a balance sheet on both companies. Notice I'm using the new format in Xero for Xero's new reports. So we have a balance sheet. We have some receivables here. I have a balance sheet with some receivables here. Now, if I wanted to get a look inside accounts receivable, in both cases I can click on the number from the report. That's very easy to do. But a report like this is sort of useless if I can't group it by customer. Notice here it's grouped by account. The whole list is just a long list of invoices from all different customers. So here in the drop-down in QuickBooks Online, I simply group it by customer, run report, and now I've got something that's very meaningful because I can see by customer exactly what we've invoiced them during the period that I'm reporting on, which again in this case is this year to date. If I go into Xero and I've clicked in and I've got something similar, a long list of transactions and receivables, invoices and payments. If I want to go total this by customer, I would expect to find it here in the layout group by, and I would just choose customer, right? Wrong. There's no option here to group this by customer or any kind of name for that matter. So the moral of the story is I can't do it. I can't get it done. Believe me, I've tried. Xero completely lacks the ability to group an account like this or by customer. And it's not one of these things where you would say, oh, well, why would you ever need that? You need this all the time. There's definitely a very important and strong need for this kind of thing. So when it comes to customization of reports, Xero has made some enhancements. There are some things they've done to make these reports more customizable. But to be very honest, and again, offering my opinion on this, they're overly robust in areas that I don't need and not robust enough in critical areas that I do, such as what I've just shown you. I can insert content, a text block or a footer. So again, there's some nice formatting features that Xero offers, but again, really good on stuff I don't necessarily need that much, not so good on the stuff that I really do need. I need the ability to drill into a detailed report from a balance sheet and be able to total that detail by customer or vendor. Think about customer deposits when we get paid in advance from customers. My liability account on the balance sheet cannot be totaled by customer in Xero to give me a clear picture of how much I've got on deposit and from whom. In QuickBooks, it's a snap to run that report and customize it. And QuickBooks has an entire customization area where I can really get detailed about what columns are displayed and about how things are filtered. I can filter on all kinds of things. I can filter on customers and vendors. QuickBooks Online is leaps and bounds ahead of Xero in terms of the customizing capability when it comes to the reporting. And ultimately, this is why I chose QuickBooks Online over Xero, because as somebody who works as an outsourced CFO, the reporting is critically important. It's the most important thing after making sure that the books are done accurately. So for that reason, I chose QuickBooks Online over Xero. But like I said in the beginning, I encourage you to look at both products yourself, because the things you care about may be different than the things I care about, and ultimately make your own decision. Hopefully what I've shown you here is enough to give you a start at looking at both products so that you can arrive at your own decision about what's better, QuickBooks Online versus Xero. And that's the end of my deep dive. As always, please post your comments and questions and concerns and feedback. I would love to hear from you. I'm sure there are going to be some Xero fans out there who are going to want to blast me on this, and I'm open to it. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to know why it is that the people who love Xero love it better than QuickBooks Online, especially given the framework of what I've just laid out here and the reasons why I actually like QuickBooks Online better as a core accounting product. As always, I hope you learned something here, had some fun along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.